There we go. All right. Well, like I said, welcome. Thanks for coming on this Veterans Day. So today I wanted to cover as part of our series of the four pillars. Last month I broke down the four pillars individually on a high level. So now we're going to dive into each pillar specifically each month as we go through. So today I wanted to talk about social engagement and the idea that busy doesn't necessarily mean connected. And I think sometimes that it can be something we're missing. I talk to people and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I'm all over the place." But when you really dive into it, sometimes they're missing the connections and they're just filling their calendar with things because that's what they think they need to do. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So when it comes to connection, we have to be mindful that one of the biggest issues as we age, and actually in our society in general, it's not necessarily only aging individuals, but we have a very high risk of loneliness in our current society for many reasons. Um, but just to remind anyone that was here last time, the facts that I went over last month was in 1900, there was only 100,000 Americans who were 85 years old or older. And they are predicting by 2050, there will be 19 million Americans over the age of 85. The 85 plus category is the fastest growing age group right now. And to add to this statistic, currently, people over the age of 85, 60% of them um, will need some sort of support once they reach the age of 85 from a support system for functional limitations. And this isn't necessarily bathing or toileting, all those terrible words. This could be do you call in an emergency? Who can help you pick up medication? Who can come visit with you? And so that's why. So my goal is I kind of want to flip that script so we can lower that percentage of people over the age of 85 who do need more and more support. But in order to do that, we have to address the elephant in the room and acknowledge, that we're aging. So, one topic that I'm very interested in, and we're actually going to dive into it further as we move through this collective, is the difference between lifespan and health span. So, lifespan is the idea of, we can all live to 100. But if I'm living to 100 and I'm in a wheelchair or I need a lot of care, do we really want to live to 100? Is that our ideal situation? Where I want to focus more on is health span, the idea of living to 100, but doing it as in a healthy way, trying to make sure to promote our independence and health as we age. And this really comes back when we're talking about social connections. So, just for those that love a little data, the Surgeon General said that loneliness is as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is crazy. And being socially isolated increases your risk of dementia by 50%. And poor social relationships, you have a 29% higher risk of heart disease. And the three biggest things we can do to avoid being socially isolated or lonely and to maintain our health, reduce dementia, heart disease. Of course, we're used to the first two, physical activity and diet and nutrition. But social connection is now number three when they look at um, things that are important to keep our health in check as we age. And some of the reasons that our social connections change as we're older, and I'm sure you all have felt some of these, is when you retire. Sometimes your social connections are at work. And so retirement can put us in a new environment. Maybe we are having some health and mobility changes. Friendships are transitioning. I'm sure you notice people are really thinking about where their next step is. Do they move toward children? Do they stay where they're at? Do they move to a community? So friendships are evolving and transitioning. For some of us, we're gonna be having to deal with caregiver duties for a spouse, that can really affect our social connection. And then loss of role or identity, and this does tie closely to retirement, but also as we age, there's an insecurity that can arise. And so making sure we find a way to, find our purpose and our role in this phase of life. But what doesn't change as we get older is the need to feel seen. We need to have a purpose. One of the biggest things as we age, and especially I used to run memory care communities for a very long time. And when I would train associates, that's how I would train them is you have to, everybody innately wants a purpose. And it doesn't go away no matter how old we are or if our cognition is failing. So having a purpose is one of the hallmarks of having good social connection. We need to laugh, be touched, and be part of something. So, we're going to talk about the term recreation. So, the term recreation is an activity done for enjoyment when one is not working. A little background about myself is how I got into senior living was I got a degree from a very small college here in North Carolina called Belmont Abbey, and it was a degree in therapeutic recreation. So I spent 4 years learning how to help people recreate. When I first got out of school, I thought I wanted to work with children, and that did not happen. I found my way to a memory care community, a senior living community. And so that's how I got my start in senior living was by being an activity director and really helping residents with dementia, be able to recreate. Very quickly after, I realized there was a whole business in senior living, and I grew very quickly into the executive director role. And I moved out of memory care into very large buildings that had independent living, assisted living, and memory care. But recreation has always been the hallmark of what I believe and how I think people stay healthy. So let's dive into that a little bit. So there's a few ways we look at recreation. We first look at it at we're on a spectrum. Are we extroverted or introverted? And we're not an introverted extrovert. We're on a spectrum. We could be more extroverted than introverted, or ambivalent in the middle. But knowing where you fall on that spectrum is important as we're planning our social connections as we age. The other areas I look at when I'm supporting my clients or when I just talk about aging and recreation is I call them the three R's. What were our roles? So, what jobs did we have? Being in, sales versus being an accountant are two very different personalities. So, knowing what your roles were is helpful to know how you recreate. Your relationships. Were you somebody who had a lot of relationships or a small group of relationships? A lot of acquaintances or a small number of acquaintances. So knowing, are you a mom? Are you an aunt? Where do those relationships fall in your life and how do you relate to other people? And then recreation, which is how do you recreate? And how we describe that is the different types you'll see to the right. So there's two types of way we recreate, and I think this is the most important piece of this conversation right here, this slide, because people don't realize how they recreate. So if you are a purposeful recreator, you are somebody who likes a job. You find yourself in a group, but maybe you end up being the treasurer or the president of the women's club. Or if somebody gets sick around you, you're organizing the meal train. A lot of times, purposeful recreators are the ones that struggle the most with retirement if they haven't been thoughtful about how they're going to get their recreation, because those are the people that found recreation with the people they worked with the job they had. Even though they're very excited to retire, if you don't fill your life with other purposeful recreation, you can feel a loss. So I identify myself as a purposeful recreator. I like to have a purpose when I go into a group. I like to have a job, but I also am on the extroverted side. So I like to be around people. If you're a social recreator, these are the people that love to come to an event, or they don't really want a job, they just want to arrive. Bingo, book clubs, and even if you're an introvert, this can be a dinner. Going to dinner with friends is how you find your recreation. So anything where there's not a task involved is where you find the social recreators. And it's not to say, just like the extroverted, introverted, you can find yourself overlapping, but you will have one that dominates the other. And so understanding that about yourself can help as we identify social connections. And I apologize for the formatting on my screen. I had gone through and fixed it all, but none of it saved. So I apologize for the words that are messed up in the lowercase words. I had to bring it over from PowerPoint into Google Drive, and I didn't like it so much. So there are three big types of connections. And when we think about our social connections, we want to have touch a little bit of all three, but you're going to find yourself maybe leaning into one more than the other. And this is where I want to stress the point of being busy doesn't mean you're connected. I have a lot of people I work with who are naturally introverts, and maybe a dinner with friends once a week is all they need when it comes to connection. They feel connected, they're totally fine with it. So it's okay to have one or two touch points throughout the week. We don't need to stress ourselves out about, how busy am I? So types of connections are the one-on-one relationships. Who's checking in on you? Maybe it's the anniversary of your spouse's death. Do you have who are those people that are checking in on you? Who are those people that you can, call and say, "Hey, do you want to go out to dinner?" Um, Group belonging. So these are the book clubs, the any event that there's a group and it's a specific group that kind of is, grown and everyone's there for a common interest. And then last is community engagement, volunteering, getting out there, maybe, working. Some people, these are the people that have the part-time jobs at Lowe's or the library. They want to get themselves out into the community in a purposeful way. And so those are the types of connections. Now, are barriers to connection and things we need to be aware of that can limit, and things we need to realize if they're happening, how can we overcome them? And of course, if you're having mobility issues and don't feel as comfortable getting around, transportation is a big one. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. If you're starting to not feel comfortable driving at night or to new places, and you're noticing that it's limiting your social connection, that's something to be aware of. If we are struggling with grief or anxiety, more than we ever have, or there's a reason we are, maybe losing friends, losing a spouse, or as we age, anxiety can creep its way in. And I know I don't have to say, most people feel that. But if it's stopping us from doing what we normally used to love, we need to be aware. This is my favorite, habitual independence. I'm fine on my own. I don't need anyone. There are people who are out there who they think that it's actually a sign of lack of independence if they start, wanting to rely on other people, even though it's a very smart thing to want to start being around other people, in a organized way, but not letting your own fear of losing independence be the reason you don't find connection. And that also is highlighted in the next one, this internal pressure to maintain independence, even when social needs go unmet. This is very common. I'm seeing it change more with this generation, but the generation when I first started in senior living 20 years ago, hanging on to a house that you bought when you first got married or when you had your kids. And it was such a sense of pride to own this home and to stay in it until you wanted to age in it, even if it actually became a barrier to you getting out and about. So that's we need to make sure we're not falling for some of those pressures we put on ourselves. Or because there's some insecurity or anxiety, sometimes finding new ways to socialize can be hard. And we're not sure how to find it. We don't know. We haven't found our group yet, especially if we've moved. So, if you're starting to feel that socializing is creating anxiety or stress, another thing we need to pay attention to because there are solutions to all of this. It goes back to my whole mantra with openly aging. Just being aware that we are feeling some of these things is our first step to make sure that we're being intentional about overcoming them. So, just like we work with a financial advisor or we go to our doctor for health planning, we need to build a social strategy. Social wellness takes intention. So, doing a check on yourself. When I work with clients, this is what I say. Okay, my first question to them is, what does your social life look like now? Who do you talk to every week? Who's in your circle? What groups are you a part of? Where are you seen and known? If you didn't show up to something, or do you have an event or a group that you're part of that if you didn't show up, it would be noticed and somebody would be checking in on you? Or you have a neighbor, and if they don't see you get the newspaper every day, so finding those people that notice you and notice when you're not there, that's a big piece. And when I adjusted my slides, this one was supposed to say, what makes you feel purpose in your daily life? We all need to feel purpose. Like I said earlier, it is a human emotion and a human need to want to help, want to be part of something. So, really evaluating what is my purpose. It could be grandkids, having a great time with grandkids. It could be a part time job. It could be, you're the person in the neighborhood who says hello to everyone. You are kind of the social butterfly. There's so many ways to feel purpose, volunteering, but really sitting back and saying, what are the things that I find make me feel like I have a purpose? And again, it's just all about being intentional and thoughtful about it. And I said before, where you live, about if you're staying or living in a place that you are either having a hard time leaving because you love it so much or there's some pride. When we're talking about social connection, one of the biggest issues I see is sometimes people are living in a place, a home that does not promote their independence or social connection. It hinders it. And it doesn't mean it's happening now. This is all about proactiveness. But the way I describe this the best is if you all of a sudden were not able to drive to your social events, maybe it was because you're uncomfortable driving, maybe medically you're not able to drive. What would that do to your social connection? Would you then be isolated at home and have to rely on your daughter, your adult child, your grandkids, neighbors, um, to make sure that you felt socially connected? And for some people I work with, staying home is exactly what they want to do. They're introverted, they don't need a lot of social connection. They know the pros and cons, the cons of staying home when it comes to social connection. But maybe they have a really close knit group of friends that, they are confident that they will make sure that they come visit, that stuff. But knowing and being able to look at your environment on whether it will promote or hinder your social connection is the first step in thinking about what future options we may have. Oh, and this was not supposed to be in there. Okay. So, the big key takeaways from what I wanted to discuss today is connection is not optional. It's a foundational to health and happiness. So if we are not intentional about how we socially connect now and what that may look like in the future, that is a big risk factor in how healthy we will be long term, going back to our health span versus lifespan. Intentional social engagement is one of the most effective ways to increase your health span. Knowing how you recreate is the key to finding and keeping meaningful relationships and activities. So if you find yourself, I don't know why I signed up for this book club, or I don't, this is not a time in life to feel like we're doing anything out of obligation. We should be doing everything because we want to do them. If you've always wanted to learn to sew, now's the time. Go take that class, go meet some people. If you're single, and looking to, meet, not maybe necessarily for dating, but just, meet other men and women who are also widows. I can speak for my local area. We have a whole seniors social group. There's a membership involved, and they go to dinner once a month. And it's just a great way to meet other people that maybe you wouldn't have met. Um, and a supportive community can help you foster the right kinds of connections, the ones that bring purpose, joy, and fulfillment as you age. And when I say supportive community, this could be a senior community, an independent community, or it could be a church or any kind of a senior center that you are really involved in. But it has to be a community that you feel comfortable in, you have purpose there, and it brings you joy. And that's what we mean when we say supportive community. So the goal isn't to stay busy, it's to stay connected, because the more connected you are, the longer, healthier, and more joyful your lives become. It's about feeling connected to the people and moments that matter most, and not just having the busiest calendar on the block. That is not the goal. I would rather somebody have two valuable social engagements a week than something every single day that you're just, stopping in. For some people who are extreme extroverts, purposeful extroverts, or even social extroverts, a full calendar is what they need, and they're going to do it. But I want to take, if you're not that person and you don't need a ton of social engagement or social connection, or you feel like your social connection now is good and you're happy, I don't want people to feel pressure to, as we hear more and more about social connection, like, oh my gosh, am I doing enough? If you can sit back today and feel seen, noticed, people would miss you if you didn't show up to something, and you feel purpose, then you're on the right track. It doesn't matter how many times a week you're out and about. So, I'd like to open it up to conversation if we want to talk about social connection, or if we have questions about social connection. Um, I hope this was helpful to take kind of an inventory of your own social connection and how to relate it back to aging.
Hi, Allison, it's Kathy.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm not on camera because I just got back from a long walk. when I
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Where do you live? It's freezing down here where I am, and where are you from?
Yeah, well, I'm in Port Jervis, New York, which is about two
Oh,
hours northwestish of New York City, where I lived for 40 some years. And
oh wow. Okay.
yeah, retired at the end of May, fully retired at the end of May, March, I'm sorry, of this year. So, so yeah, I'm kind of in that, and I moved to Port Jervis, which is it's a dedicate designated a city, but it's it's kind of like a small town. I mean, it's definitely not Queens or Manhattan, New York. So
Yeah.
uh,
Nothing is. You can never find that.
right, right. But
Yeah.
the interesting thing about that too, and based on what you're talking about, is you can be highly isolated in New York City.
Yes. Hmm.
Extremely isolated. And um but I moved here because I had some friends here who have been here for 20 some years, and cost. I mean, I needed to reduce, all of my costs related
Mhm.
to, once moving into retirement. So, um, and just, I mean, I'm loving retirement. I mean,
Oh,
not
good, good, good. So what
not.
did you
I mean,
retire from?
well, I worked almost my entire working career in the nonprofit world, nonprofit sector, social
Okay.
services primarily, um, as a fundraiser, professional development and fundraising executive. The
Oh,
last 10 years of my career, I was with an organization based in New York City called Care for the Homeless that provided health care and shelter services for homeless New Yorkers.
oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so
That's a big
yes,
job because there's a lot.
yeah, yeah, it's it's a big, major crisis, but
Mhm.
affordability and housing is the main
It's the reason
issues.
the election happened on Tuesday because
Yep,
people want it.
yeah.
Mhm. Yep, it's a big issue.
So yeah, I mean, just a lot of this resonates. I mean, what you're saying. I don't want to hog all the the time.
Mhm. You're
Uh,
fine,
it,
yeah.
um, it resonates. I took a class this past Saturday in CPR and a first aid.
Oh, that's
uh,
great.
yeah, I got certified in that, partly related to, or mostly related to, really volunteering here at a what they call it, a warming station, but it's a basement of a church where there's beds set up for people who are homeless in this town, of which I've learned there are 33 homeless people,
Oh,
or
wow.
thereabouts.
Yeah.
um, and they can come in out of the cold. It operates like mid November through, I think it's April or May of each year, and so volunteering, and there's different roles, but most likely I'll be something like a greeter and helping people check in, and uh, once a week, something like that. And I've already met some
Yeah.
of the people that organize this, that are on the board of this organization that's doing it, and met some of them. So I just figured that's a good way to broaden
Oh,
my.
yeah. And especially, yeah, take everything that you've had a passion for a long time and be able to
Mhm.
find. So would you classify yourself as a purposeful recreator?
Um, yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at some point I'd probably like to um find more sort of educational opportunities, classes or something. Um,
Yeah.
I'm a big hiker, and I can hike 4 to 5 miles just like 10 minutes from my house,
Oh, yeah.
where I live now. So I've been taking advantage of that in terms of just activity and getting out. Um, so but yeah, I think in terms of recreating, I'd like to, have a purpose or to it.